Johnson, local runner there. And as we go along the line, we'll see the likes of Brett Robinson, Osaka. Mark Scott, the winner last year, the local winner. And wouldn't it be great if he could fulfill that performance this year? It would be tough, wouldn't it? He's got one of the greatest there, Kenenica Bekele, and then he's got Olympic champions and world champions, particularly in the shape of Kiplimo and Barega. We'll talk about those two once we get underway. Just a few seconds away from the start of not only the elite men's race, but the 2022 Great North Run. Ailish McColgan with the honours. Richard Whitehead joining everybody else as they cross the start line. Each now, I'm sure, with their thoughts still with Her Majesty the Queen, but now looking at the road ahead. And the road ahead stretches towards the finish line at South Shields, and for many it will be the first time. For lots, they've been here so many times before. For a very few, they've been here every single Great North Run, which has given us so many great memories and so many great races over the years, with particularly at the front the athletes who year on year come back to what is now one of the greatest races in the world. They come from Jarrow, from Blythe, from Berwick, from Aberdeen, from Manchester and Liverpool and Exeter and London. But then they also come from around the world. And we welcome them every single year. And this year will be one which will be remembered so much more perhaps than many in the past. They'll go in waves. We won't have them all cross the line together. There are too many. Otherwise, the road literally fills between the start line here and the finish every year. So they'll be patient, and it will be midday before the final runners will get their chance to cross the start line and join in this wonderful occasion. Ailish will be enjoying this, Paula.
She will be enjoying it. The others will be enjoying seeing her as well. And it's a beautiful sight, isn't it? I think the image of the amazing Queen, that we will never see anyone like her ever again, with so many people flowing beneath her, and as you said, the long road ahead, and continuing the work that she's shown us and the way that she's shown us how to live the life and to lead the country.
Well, they stretch back all the way up the central motorway. The operation, which it gets put into place every year. This year there were so many other plans had to be thought of, plans B, C, D and E, I'm sure, but I think it's absolutely right, and as Brendan said earlier on, it's a fitting tribute to Her Majesty the Queen that everybody is here today to take part in this event. And as they pass under that image, I'm sure a few will have a little look back, but they are on their way now, as others still are filing in to have their opportunity. Off to the left, last year we had the whole town moor act as the host for the Great North Run, where we had to change the course, and finished on the Great North Road, where Mark Scott came back in resplendent style. More of an out and back course last year, but we're back to the familiar route in 2022. Let's be honest, Paula, what's his chances? You never know.
You never know. I mean, I think it's fair to say he's had an up and down year, hasn't he? Not helped, of course, by getting sick, which so many of the athletes have had to manage this year, and it's almost become part and parcel of what elite athletes have to deal with, on top of all of the other elements of getting yourself into shape and staying healthy. But I certainly think the victory last year really helped him, and helped him grow in confidence as a racer and feel more comfortable over this half marathon distance.
Well, on the right in the orange, the hot favourite to win this, that's Jacob Kiplimo, the world record holder. He only took it by a second from Kandi of Kenya, but he's a phenomenal road racer. He's an unbelievable talent. First saw him really come to prominence on home soil, literally. The World Cross Country Championships under 20s, he won that, and he's had to follow on many occasions Cheptegei, the Olympic champion and world champion, but he himself is now showing certainly on the roads, he's just better than so many people, and even Cheptegei finds it hard to hang on to him on the roads. Lots of the top British athletes here, apart from Mark Scott. We'll maybe get the chance to talk about a few of them, the likes of Ben Connor here as well. But meanwhile, approaching South Shields, or in South Shields, they're through the Nook. This is the lead of the wheelchair.
So Dan Sidbury and Dave Weir are still together. They've picked up the pace. They're back to kind of 3:18-minute miles, so they did drop to 4 minutes, but that's because some of the rolling hills. And Dan Sidbury's made a few attempts to try and get away from Dave Weir. He doesn't probably want to really be in a sprint finish with them, but it's kind of a bit of a replay of the big half last week where they both finished within 2 seconds of each other. So there's still a lot of tactics going on at the moment in terms of how they're racing, but they're both looking quite comfortable, both within themselves. The bit that they will be thinking of is the downhill turn onto the front, because for the wheelchair athletes, the speed they're going, that is a bit precarious.
Yeah, that's coming up for them, real technical part of the course. Meanwhile, for the women, Paula, we're down to three big names.
Yeah, the surges that Helena Berry was throwing in and the hard work that she alone is doing at the front of this group have put paid to Gebrikaden, who is back down the road. She's still in sight. She could possibly work her way back to them, but she's more likely now, I think, in the sights of Charlotte Purdue chasing her, and the race is down to these three. The last mile, taking them to 6 miles, a slightly downhill mile, but was still covered in 4:55. So there was a clear picking up of the pace from Helena Berry. I think decided, I'm not running alongside Chepchirchir anymore and just keeping the rhythm going. I'm going to put my foot down and make this a full half marathon race.
Yeah, we always have to be careful with some of the mile splits in the Great North Run, and the 6 mile is kind of take you down to Whitebear Pool around the corner, and then the 10k point you pass, and so it is one of the quicker miles. But I think you're right, we're into the tough part of the race, and Charlotte Purdue's on her own now though, but she will at least have the chance to aim at the Ethiopian who's just dropped off that top 3. So Charlotte Purdue still working hard. It's only, well, approaching halfway for them, but everybody back at the start, just setting out on their Great North Run journey of 2022. And what a year it's been for Eilish. She's talked about it herself, and Paula mentioned it, but I'm not sure she could have even have thought she'll finish the season, as it were, on the platform at the Great North Run, which is a special honour indeed. Orange Wave runners just approaching the start. Many of the club athletes from around the country, particularly in the northeast as well, will be in that section. Well, we talk a lot about the Tyne Bridge, but just off to the Tyne Bridge on the Gateshead side, that's the Sage building, which is also an iconic part of the quayside area. The Queen opened that building in 2005 and is very much a part of the scenery of the quayside in Newcastle and Gateshead. Under the railway bridge, Mark Scott's just pushing on early here. That's good to see. He's probably thought, I thought might be a bit quicker than this. It's been a tricky season for Mark, picked up COVID as well, and probably didn't get the performances at the championships that he would have wanted, Paula.
No, I certainly think he would have gone into those championships, particularly the World Championships in Oregon, when he's based in Oregon, just up the road. In fact, moving down to Eugene with his training group now, I think he would have wanted a better performance than he came out with there, and probably is venting a little bit of that frustration out on the race today, which can be a good thing. And he's, as I said, fueled and confident by the run last year, and wanted to build on that with a retention of this title.
Well, this is interesting. Tanny down at the finish. You can see we've got about 500 meters left. David, we're trying to get away.
So he is trying to get away, and Dan Sidbury is just sitting on his back wheel trying to get as much of a pull as he can. It is a tailwind along here, and this will be playing into Dave Weir's hands. It's going to be a really decent PB for Dan Sidbury. His PB's 51.34 from Cardiff, so you know, there'll be about 43 minutes today, so this is much more what he can do. But even though Dave Weir's got a gap, he's still looking behind him. He still just wants to check how much time he's got to run into the finish line.
Well, he's done this so many times before. He's won the Great North Run on 8 occasions. Looks as though he's heading for his 9th, though. Just a last little check behind, and the arm, the fist pump comes for David Weir. His 9th Great North Run title. A pretty good time as well, and as Tanny was saying, a massive personal best for Dan Sidbury in 2nd place. Chased him home all of the way. David Weir just had enough. He's just got that ability, as you said, Tanny, when he needed it, just to pull away. There's that little bit of strength in the arms.
It's his tactical knowledge, but also he's done this course so many times. He knows the places that he needs to make that difference, and he timed the race perfectly today. And he was really disappointed with the Commonwealth Games, with puncturing and you know, not being able to finish in the way he wants. So I think this will just a little bit make up for that gold medal that he wasn't able to win.
Great performance from Dan Sidbury, though. I'm sure, despite coming second, if you're going to come second to anybody at the Great North Run, then make sure it's David Weir. So well done to those two. We'll be back for the finish of the women's wheelchair when they approach, but meanwhile, back in the front, looks like Kiplimo's decided to pick things up, but for a brief moment we had Mark Scott out in front. He's just tucked in behind the two great stars, Kiplimo and the Olympic champion Barega. So let's just find out Mark's thoughts on his preparation for the Great North Run.
Bit of an up and down one for me really this year. Started out flying in February, March time, picked up a bronze medal at the World Indoor Championships.
And it's going to be Mark Scott for World Championship bronze. What an effort.
And broke my own British record indoors for the 5,000 metres. So ran 12:57 and only the 2nd person in British history to go under 13 minutes for that distance. I thought, yeah, I'm unstoppable after that medal and running under 13 minutes. But later into the outdoor track season, just things haven't necessarily gone my way, which I'll look to rectify, obviously with the Great North Run coming up. It's sometimes hard to get out of bed knowing you've run 20 miles a day before and you're not feeling quite 100%. I wouldn't say I ever dislike it, but that is when you really test yourself, and that's what brings the results on the day. And hopefully we can take care of business on Sunday. A little different like it would be going up to the marathon, but 13.1 is definitely a sweet spot for me coming off the track season and having a couple of weeks to get ready for this distance too.
Winner in its 40th anniversary year is Mark Scott of Great Britain.
The main thing is to win, which I did last year. All those people cheering do know who I am, being from the local area, so that is really nice. Just that home crowd advantage always plays a huge part. Kenenissa's running. I'll put myself in there as a reigning champion. Jacob Kiplimo, Barega, these are all multiple-time medalists on the track, world records both on and off the track. It's an honour to be lining up against those guys. As the reigning champion, I'll be #1 on the vest, so really looking forward to it.
So Mark tucked nicely in the group there. The pace has been okay, nothing too silly, and Kiplimo just now moved to the front. Barega in his first series half marathon. There's Gateshead Stadium. How's the Diamond League last year? So many great athletic moments over the years. You've got to have a good memory, though, to remember some of them. He says, looking at Paula, she's looking at me.
I've got a good memory. How's your memory doing?
It's okay, actually, certain things. A bit selective at times, but not too bad. And the bowl there, the Gateshead Bowl, was the scene of great cross-country championships as well, including the World Cross-Country Championships, which I mentioned that Kiplimo has attended with such great success. Barega, Well, his range is incredible. We actually just saw a clip there, didn't we, of him winning the World Indoor Championships ahead of Mark Scott. He's somebody who, you might not remember this, Paula, but we were asked, I think Gabby asked us back in the World Indoors when they were held in Birmingham to name somebody to watch out for the next few years. And I actually picked Solomon Barega. I think he'd won the silver medal on that occasion. He was very young then, but what a career he's had.
Yeah, and a little bit perhaps been overlooked, but he's a beautiful runner to watch, isn't he? He's very relaxed, economical, and almost looks as though it's effortless in his style. Kenenica Bekele also looks that, but looks laboured running alongside him, because he is just, well, he's a younger generation as well, but it just seems that easy and that fluid to Barega, and almost imperceptibly there he's moved ahead of the group without appearing to pick up the pace. But from that overhead shot looking down, you see that he has started to open up gaps that the others at the moment have not responded to.
By his exceptional standards, it hasn't been a good year. He didn't have a very good World Championships. He was running the other night in Zurich, and the expectation from Ethiopia is huge. You know, when you particularly going to the Olympic 10,000 meters. But when you think the only other 3 Ethiopians who won it were Kenenica Bekele, Haile Gebrselassie, and Merit Yifta. You know, that's an incredible group of people that he's now joined, and so he is considered to be one of their greats already, but I'm sure there's a lot more running ahead for him, and it'd be really interesting to see how he matches up against Kiplimo today. I'm not sure he's coming to this, you know, the best prepared for something like the Great North Run, because he's had a full track season, but I'm really interested to see how he goes.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating race panning out. I think it's a measure of the respect that Kiplimo holds him in, the glances that he's casting at him there, just trying to get a measure of what he's trying to do here. Is he trying to break away, or is he just testing out the group? And Kiplimo was the one who easily moved alongside him and just looked at the faces of the other runners just to see how they felt and get his measure of the racing. And that's what a lot of the athletes will be doing this early in the race, is just kind to get a feel for who are the main dangers in that pack, and kind of think and plan ahead in their minds when they might want to start making their moves and their bids to win this race.
Well, we've got a mix of numbers there, with some orange numbers who were obviously late. We've got 1 or 2 other colours who are maybe a little early, but it looks as though this is the white wave about to get underway. What an operation this is. It is every year, and everybody would have been put on standby while the decision was made, and had to take some time to make that decision. There was a 5K event which was due to be held on Friday. That was quite rightly cancelled, and the time taken to find out if everybody was supportive of this event going ahead today, which indeed they were. And all of the money, I think Brendan mentioned it, that is raised every single year for charities, so many of whom were supported by the Queen. As we just go back to the wheelchair finish, Tanny.
Well, this is Eden Rainbow Cooper and Sammy Kinghorn. They've been neck and neck for the whole of the race, and it's going to be a huge PB for Eden in terms of this. But she knew she had to go out early, because Sammy Kinghorn, world champion, 100 and 200 metres sprint, world record holder as well. And she said to me this morning, if she was going to beat her, it had to be early. She had to almost, she got down to the front, she had to just go for it. Sammy's just trying to wedge through. Is she going to have enough time to get past her? This is going to be really close.
It's room as well, just looking for a little bit of room here. This is going to be incredibly close, heading to the line, and Rainbow Cooper's just got the advantage. Is she going to hang on? I think she may have done. Not so easy to tell from that angle, but that was, I think, one of the closest finishes I've ever seen at the Great North Run in a wheelchair race.
That was an incredible women's race in terms of the pace they were pushing at. They were, you know, neck and neck the whole way through, didn't give each other, you know, anything at all. That's Nathan Maguire on the left-hand side just coming up and saying well done to Sammy. But that's a huge performance again by Eden, you know, to win a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games. She's just made this massive jump this year, and she's not afraid to take it on. And she's part of the Weir Archer group, so Dave Weir just shaking a hand as well.
Let's see if we can have another look at this. It was incredibly close. Look at this. Even on the right there in the orange and the black. Yeah, you can see maybe, what, half a wheel, if that?
Oh, not... The only way I could kind of call that was just Eden, the way she picked her hands off the wheel and didn't try to get one more push in. But that's kind of what you want on the Great North, is a race that finishes in that way. I don't think Eden can quite believe it yet. She's still looking very serious on the finish line.
I'm being told the winning margin was 7/100ths of a second.
My maths is not that good, but they're probably doing about 18 miles an hour.
Well, you're going to try and convert that into a distance, aren't you? Let's say it was a couple of inches, shall we?
It's not much.
Okay, there you go. Well, not much to choose between the elite women either. Is the three of them still there? Peres Jepchirchir just checking her watch. They're on the John Reed Road. They'll be approaching the 10-mile mark. I think they will have just passed 9. There's always someone running in the opposite direction. Did you see that guy in the central reservation there? Anyway, Paula, what about these three? Helen's been the one who's been trying to force the issue. Ayana's looked tired, perhaps not tired. Looked as though maybe the pace was hurting earlier on, but she looks very comfortable there.
I do. I think that Ayana has grown in confidence and is looking better the further we get into this race. She definitely looked like she was struggling to hold on as Helen was throwing in those early surges, but now she's moved alongside her, and it's now Peres Jepchirchir who looks as though she is the one who is kind of struggling to stay with this pace the most. That gap back to Gebrekkeden has not grown anymore either, so she's not completely out of it, although it does, the camera lens does foreshorten that distance a little bit, but it's definitely, I think, Helen calling the shots.
Well, that gap hasn't got any bigger, and in fact it's shortened a little bit for the very reason that actually that 5K section was slower than the previous one. The second one was the quickest 5K section. This one was slower. You do have to kind of climb through the John Reed Road a little bit, but she'll realise that this is not over for her at this point. No danger behind. So Gebrekkeden has got the chance, perhaps, to look at those three ahead. Another one preparing for London, but she's got, what, about 10 seconds between her and the leaders. Okay, we're going to pop back to JJ at the start.
Well, I'm down at the start still, where plenty of runners are still forming up. I'm joined by Vicky and Elliot. Now, Vicky, you guys have an incredible bond. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so in 2008 I was diagnosed with a condition called aplastic anemia, and the only treatment for it is a stem cell transplant. And luckily enough, Elliot here was found to be a match for me through the charity Anti-Nolan, which we're running for today, and donated his bone marrow to me, and we're here sort of 13 years on, running Great North Run this year, and we ran the London Marathon last year.
Fantastic, Elliot. You're an absolute hero. As we said, you have run the London Marathon before. It's the first time doing this. How does it feel to be here taking part?
It's just amazing. Again, to be with Vicky, obviously, you know, for the amazing work Anthony Nolan did to save Vicky's life, to see, you know, to finally meet up after, you know, so long, and to do the London Marathon last year, the world's greatest marathon, to do the greatest half marathon made sense, considering Vicky's a medical student in Newcastle as well, which obviously is a lovely end to our story. You know, the fact we saved her life, and save her life is amazing, but the fact that Vicky's, you know, going to be a medical student and hopefully going to save so many other people's lives is incredible, really.
Fantastic, Vicky. You're a hero as well. So you're literally, you work just over there quickly, yeah?
Yeah, that's my building over there, so I'm in familiar territory this morning.
Fantastic. Well, I hope it is a wonderful day for both of you. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Kiplimo just putting a bit of pace on here. Barega with him. Kenenisa Bekele also trying to hang on. 40 now, Kenenisa. I had to double check that when I was looking at that this morning. Turned 40 a couple of months ago. Just through 5 miles, Paula. And I think Kiplimo's deciding enough is enough. Going to get this moving now.
Yeah, as I said, I think he was glancing around at who was in that pack, trying to get a measure of people, and was obviously running very comfortably for him. It was very easy for him, so he's just picked it up a notch and just in doing so, has drawn away Selemon Barega and Kenenisa Bekele, and I think you're absolutely right. Bekele is the one who is trying to hold on at this stage and trying to find not just the efforts of Kiplimo, but the time working against him as well. And I think it's definitely not as easy for Kenenisa Bekele to come out here and to race as it was a few years ago. Time waits for nobody. It is a big gap and growing back to that chase group led by Mark Scott.
Yeah, a few athletes in there, including Brett Robinson. I'll just check who else is in that group. But at the front here, look at Kenenisa's doing. I think the thing, I mean, we both know this. Your brain keeps telling you, you know, I need to go with this because that's a competitive instinct. That's what you've done all your career. So you can't help yourself, even though you think somebody might be thinking, oh, maybe you're not in shape to do this. But he's having a go. He's trying to hang on.
Yeah, and I think it's very hard to overrule that instinctive signal coming from your and command coming from your brain to go with it, because you're absolutely right, your brain and your mind knows what to do. It's just the body isn't quite as able to respond as it used to be. But sometimes, just sometimes, those little signals can connect a little bit better, and he can just run a lot better than he is expecting to do on the day. And so in trying to hang on, I don't think it's a bad move at this point. He might find himself a little bit stranded between those two groups, but he is at the moment still maintaining contact and drafting a little bit off the coattails of Kiplimo and Barega.
Well, they're just approaching Whitemare Pool, where they'll take a left turn and not far from the halfway point. Whereas for so many, they are yet to even start. I mentioned earlier on, if you're just joining us, that the final runners are expected to cross the start line at around midday. There's that big pink dress in the middle there. I can't miss him. What's he wearing this? It's not pink this year. Away from him. Great to see him back. He's had some health problems himself over the last couple of years, and but he's always here raising so much for so many charities. I'm not 100% sure who he's raising money for this year. I'll find out. Now, developments in the women's race, Paula. They've slowed so much that we've now got 4.
Well, we did say that Gebrikaden was not entirely out of it, and that gap wasn't growing, and indeed as they have slowed, and so for the 9th mile they went through in 5:18. They went through the 15-kilometer point in 47:40. So having picked it up to kind of an average of around about 5:7, 5:8 with a couple of much quicker miles thrown in, they have now slowed it back down in the 10th mile, 5:26, which is exactly why Gebrikaden has caught them up. She hasn't picked it up. She's maintained her pace, but I think there's a little bit of looking around, going around there, and maybe Helena Beering not as willing to keep the pace going, and indeed Gebrikaden just maintains the pace that she was running at and goes straight to the front of that group and is looking around in confusion now, and they're almost crossing across the road because she doesn't want to be leading, but nobody else seemed willing to do it. And finally, Perez Jepchirchir is the one who says, okay, I'm going to continue the zigzags across.
Not happy, is she, Perez? Do you know what's the last time I actually watched her run in person was the Boston Marathon, which ended up a really close finish. You know, there was a lot of surging in the last couple of miles, and she came out on top then. So, you know, for the other 3, they must know that, you know, Perez can close quickly. But then you've got Helen O'Meary, who's one of the greatest track runners that we've ever seen. 5,000, 10,000, multiple world champion, never sadly won the Olympics, but Helen at her best could do that. But she's in marathon mode now, marathon training, and you know, whether or not she's got the legs to do it. And look, all of a sudden it's the Ethiopian contingent who move quickly, and Gebrikaden, who's been waiting and waiting, trying to catch. And I think that's what happens when you're in that pace, Paula, and you catch a group that's running much slower than you. My coach used to always tell me, just keep going.
The thing is that when the Ethiopian teams, they train together, up high in the forest, so above Addis Ababa, and they train on very, very narrow paths with lots of tree roots, and they train one behind another, just looking at the ground ahead of them, and they're not used to leading it out or running alongside, which I think is why Gebrselassie was quite happy continuing her pace and working her way back to them. But then when she got there, she said, okay, no, I'm not going to be the one leading at the front. I don't think it's particularly windy out there today, so I don't think that is a factor. She just didn't want to lead, and there was that zigzagging backwards and forwards across the road, trying to get somebody else to take the lead. And then when no one did that, she surged, and for a moment they all dropped into single file behind her, and then now she decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to settle down and see if somebody else will go back to the front. And it's Helena Beery now who has to kind of pick up the mantle that she's carried for most of this race in terms of leading it out and maintaining the pace and the rhythm.
Charlotte Purdue not that far behind. Charlotte has pretty much stuck to her own pace pretty well, so she's in 5th place. It's been a lonely run for Charlotte Purdue. She very quickly extricated herself from the rest of the field, but was never on with the top 4. And I think at one point she was maybe hoping, we were thinking that perhaps Gebrselassie would come back towards her, but the opposite has happened. But she's still running pretty well.
She is. If I look at the splits for Charlotte, she is a couple of minutes behind the leaders, but her 10th mile was quicker than theirs. And so she is now running at a pace that, had she been able to maintain contact, she would have been moving ahead of that lead group. So she's just running 2 or 3 seconds per mile quicker than they are at the moment, but because they are trading the lead and just nobody willing to actually push on at this point. Meanwhile, Charlotte has nobody else to try and share the pace with, so she's just in that marathon mindset of just carving out the pace and continuing her rhythm.
I'll keep popping back the start. I had half an eye on the weather, because there's a guy called Chris Stobbs who I met at Newcastle Airport 2-3 weeks ago, who told me, and he was wearing flip-flops, he was going on his holidays, and he told me, I'm running the Great North Run in flip-flops to try and break the world record. He's a volunteer for the Time Life Brigade as well. He wants to run under an hour and a half, and he does it because last year he put his shoes on the bag by mistake and ended up having to run the race in the flip-flops he was wearing, and didn't do too badly, and thought, I'll try and do the world record this year. So good luck, Chris. I'm sure he's well on his way already, but his one issue is if it rains, he's in trouble. But it's not, it's fine. No rain expected. It's a little overcast. It's actually really good weather for running, and will be fairly comfortable conditions for the vast majority of people taking part today. It's around about 17, 18 degrees. Perfect for running. Right, spread across the road here. Salomon Barega, the Olympic champion on the left-hand side. Kiplimo, the world record holder and world champion. The world record holder in the half marathon distance, and then one of the all-time greats in the middle in the white and the red, Kenenisa Bekele of Ethiopia, still there with these guys. It's been a little bit up and down. The 10K split 28:54. Well, that's about a minute down on course record, but course record's pretty quick. But these three locked together.
And Kiplimo again using the hills. Every time he's got a small rise or a little bit of a hill ahead of him, he just picks up the pace a little bit. And I just get the impression that he's testing the other two on that. And each time it is Kenenisa Bekele who struggles to go with that rising of the pace the most. But then he works himself back into it. And I think you're absolutely right. The further we get into this race and the longer that Kenenisa Bekele is still in there, the others have to factor him in as a danger.
Now, Mark Scott's going well here because that group behind is broken up as well. Osako is the one who's trying to push on. But Mark Scott running with him, running hard, running solidly. But he's having a good race so far. When you get the 7 and 8 mile point, yes, it can come back and catch up with you a little bit later on. But you're doing this because you're feeling okay, you're feeling good. If you're not, you'd check back. You wouldn't go with this increase in pace.
No, he's feeling good, and he's also benefiting from this effort of Osako to try and pull him back towards that lead group of three, and he can settle in behind him and relax in a way and just follow the pace that Osako is setting. He did actually retire, didn't he, after the Tokyo Sapporo Olympic Marathon, and then decided, no, he wasn't done racing Osaka. He was going to continue. He wasn't finished with running for a bit. And in that shot, you can see that the gap is, well, it's not all that different to the gap that the others had over Gebrekaden in the women's race, and she was able to pull that back in. And once again, Kenenisa Bekele is losing a little bit of ground too, so he becomes an interim target for those two to work towards.
Just that extension over that rise over York Avenue. I think it's the little flyover over there, and Barega and Kiplimo looking comfortable, both of them running well. Barega in his first serious half marathon, picking the Great North Run. That gives you an idea of the stature in which this race, or the stature it has in that world road running. Kiplimo was expecting Cheptegei, his illustrious teammate, to be here. Sadly, Cheptegei had to pull out during the week, the Olympic champion, but Kiplimo probably would have started as favourite anyway, even if Cheptegei had been here. He's just so good on the roads. He's got a lovely action. Maybe talk a little bit more about him as we go on, because we've got the women are heading towards the finish pretty soon, and back on the Tyne Bridge, it's filling up, both with spectators and with runners. The flags are fluttering in this lovely day for running. I think it's Stuart Paint, isn't it? The Great North Run? Sorry, the Great North Run isn't. It looks great. The Tyne Bridge. So these people have just started. We're back to three, Paula. The three big names now contesting this. Don't be fooled by Helen Obiri, everybody. She rocks and rolls anyway, but she can turn a great turn of, well, can find a great turn of pace. Ayana can do so as well, but Helen Obiri is the one who's forcing it. But in road races, Jepchirchir often finds the way to win.
Yeah, and it's timing it right here, isn't it? And this is where, again, I think knowing this stretch along the seafront is an advantage for Helen Obiri, and she's so many times that finish to perfection. Ayana will be thinking in her mind, do I need to make this a long push for home? They are inside the last mile now, and it was a pickup in that 12th mile from a 5:25 where they were messing around and exchanging the lead back to a 5:13, and that has put paid to Gebrekaden again, and she's seen that gap grow, and you just sense, don't you, that it is coming down to a little bit of a sprint between Ayana and Obiri, or is Jepchirchir just settling in and just waiting until she can see that finish line.
Two Olympic champions, Ayana, Jepchirchir, one on the track, one in the marathon, and then Helen Obiri, the defending champion, multiple world champion. 20 kilometers, just past 64 minutes, just over that. They've all decided that it was tactics today. It's not going to be an incredibly quick time. It's quick by many people's standards, but not so much by the standards that these three are capable of. All of them preparing for big marathons ahead in the next few weeks. But the task now is who has got the timing, the speed, the strength to make sure they make the move at the right time to win this. As I mentioned, Jepchirchir often looks as though she can't sprint, but is just hanging in there. And Ayana now just starting to try and move away. I think she would like to try and make it a long run for home if she can.
I think even at her best, Almas Ayana would have feared the finish of Helen Obiri, and she would have wanted to make it a long run for home. So now as she's on, as we mentioned, that road back to her very, very best, and she looks around, I think that was a little bit of a test. There'll be another couple of tests if she can find it to try and draw them at least clear of Jepchirchir here, and then she will have to time it right and have to make Helen Obiri hurt so that she cannot unleash the finish that she is so well known for. Even when she's tired and even when she's raced a lot and she's got those marathon miles in her legs, Helen Obiri can find a finish.
Yeah, in world running, there's a bit of a saying, isn't there, that a good Ethiopian will always outkick a good Kenyan, but not in Helen Obiri's case. So many times she's managed to produce the goods, and she's trying hard here, but do not write off Jepchirchir. Ayana's moving across because they'll come down the right-hand lane as they're looking at it, and that's where they're being directed. And Helen Obiri's now got Jepchirchir right on her shoulder. Ayana a metre or so behind. Just 400 metres to go. And this is what Helen Obiri knows best. She's the best track runner out of these three.
And now we see suddenly Ayana cannot respond and cannot go with that. There it is, that look over her shoulder. She won't be able to figure, I don't think, in this anymore. And it is now down to, can Helen Obiri shake off Jepchirchir?
Ayana hanging on. She's only a metre behind the single file now. Helen Obiri looks to see, is there danger? Yes, there is. She still hasn't got rid of both of them. Jepchirchir's closest, but Helen's just got a couple of metres now. And that's going to increase because she hits the 200 to go. And the track specialist gets those arms moving, driving forward. And Helen Obiri, as she did last year, just finding a little bit extra. She wants to hang on to this title. It'll be great preparation as she heads towards the New York Marathon in November. And Helen Obiri, despite not feeling so well earlier in the week, has recovered well and has waited and waited and has unleashed the sort of finish that is her trademark. Helen Obiri is the Great North Run champion 2022. Paris Jepchirchir takes second place, Ayana third, the two Olympic champions having to give way to the speed and the strength that Helen Obiri is able to muster in the closing stages. And a good performance in fourth place from Hiwot Gebrekadan, who just, when she got back to them, as soon as the surge came, couldn't go with it a second time. Well, that was expected, but wasn't sure, was it, Paula, until I guess that 200 metre to go sign?
No, it wasn't a lightning fast time. We didn't see any course record, but we did see an exciting race that really kept us guessing until the final couple of hundred meters, certainly inside the last 400 meters. And a lot of the racing there was done over that final mile, covered in 4:39. So the pace really picked up from the 5:13s and outside of 5 minutes before that to a very quick finish that will have tested those tired legs, as we mentioned, with all of these women building towards marathons. So great marathon training as well in the bank for that, and a great race from Helen Obiri in retaining her title here at the Great North Run.
Charlotte Purdue will be the next to finish, isn't too far behind. That winning time there, 67.05, and although Charlotte's personal best time has already passed, she might be heading for a season's best, where she's only just dipped under 70, 69.57, but might just be outside that as well. Maybe that'd be heading for time around about 70 minutes. Good solid run from Charlie though, and she's getting lots of support here from the crowds that are gathering. They'll be here for a good few hours at the finish at South Shields. The crowds just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So less than 400 to go. Been a lonely run for her, Paula, but she's stuck to her task well.
She has, and this is what Charlotte does very, very well. It doesn't matter whether she has people to race and to help her with the work. She's very good at staying focused on her race and putting the best performance that she can out on the day. And I'm just looking back down the road behind her, and I think is that Amy Eloise Markovits who's just approaching the 400 metre to go banner, so she's not going to make any inroads on this gap to Charlotte Purdue, but she has also maintained her pace on her own very well through this race. And I think it's good for Charlotte to take this step back towards racing at the top level and to kind of put those demons from Eugene behind her.
Yeah, disappointment for her at the World Championships for the reasons which Paula alluded to earlier, but you then do exactly that. You get going again and you set your new targets, you set your new goals, you start to build your program back, and this is a good first step back for Charlotte Purdue. 2 big years ahead, World Championships next year in Budapest and the Olympic Games in Paris. Those are 2 tempting marathons at the major championships for European athletes. So just outside 70 minutes in 5th place. And there's that smile, and that she will tuck that one away, use that as a platform, I'm sure, to build on into this winter and the targets for next year. And in a debut run, Amy Eloise has finished well here. As again, just keep running at your pace. Just people come back to you, and you keep ticking people off. And this is going to be, well, it may well be under 71 minutes, Paula.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, it's a very encouraging debut on its own, but on top of a very, very, very busy summer of racing, to close it off in this way, I think is impressive for Amy Eloise and will help her going into the winters and preparing for next year.
And included Diamond League 5,000 metres on Wednesday night, although that was always an odd one. It's a hybrid between a track and a road race. So well done to her and her debut at the Great North Run and at the half marathon distance, inside or just outside 71 minutes. 6th place. Well, no surprise in the men's race that Jacob Kiplimo has managed to pull away from Salomon Barega in the closing miles. Approaching mile 10, or no, they haven't quite gone through mile 10 yet. They've just gone the roundabout at the halfway along John Reed Road, if you like. They've got the hospital on their left. It'll be approaching, and the 10-mile mark is just ahead. So Kiplimo with a good lead. It's been a little bit up and down, hasn't it, this race? But I think if you were kind of trying to predict what would happen, this would have been the script.
Yeah, I think he was waiting, and then when he made his move, he's just put his head down and just eyes straight ahead and just keep pushing the pace on. So they went through 15 kilometres. He went through 15 kilometres in 42.44 and had a 4-second lead over Barega at that point, and that lead seems to have grown slightly since then as well. So it is now, I think, all about Jacob Kiplimo and how fast can he finish this race, how fast can he run today.
Well, you can see those quick miles there, 28, 27, 23 and 35, but they've gone through the between 10k and 15k. Paula, he's just run 13 minutes 50, which is really that's pushing it into the very high world class, and that's why he's got the gap. That's why he's pulled away, and he keeps looking at his watch there. He can probably see on the road ahead of him the 10-mile mark because they're quite tall. That's why he's just checking to see what he's approaching that point in. Really do enjoy watching him run. You know, he came from a very, very poor comes from a very poor family. And do you remember the Commonwealth Games? It was he's got a family of runners, and his brother Victor Kiplangat won the marathon there. But yes, his family is so important to him. He's kind of 3 stepbrothers, I think they are, all compete. Kenenisa Bekele again. Well, I think he's going to be solid in 3rd, although there is a charge behind Osako and Mark Scott following. They may be able to see him along this long straight road. There you can, there, definitely. That gap's not very big now between Bekele and I think it's Osako.
Yeah, you can see that, and more importantly, they can see and they can pull on that and work towards him. So there is the blue figure and the orange shoes of Suguru Osako trying to make inroads on the great Kenenisa Bekele. And at the front they have Jacob Kiplimo has gone through 10 miles in 45.44, so that last mile it covered in 4:25. If you contrast that to 4:45 of Barega, that's why the gaps are opening up as quickly as they are.
Well, it's really just down to him now how fast he wants to finish this. He's pretty much got the race won, and Barega is not getting any quicker. Crowds will start to build as he heads towards the finish line. He's got the Temple Park Leisure Centre, and again, another good cross-country course. Northeastern Cross Country Championships, often held there, just off to his right, if he were to look. He might win that if he took part in it.
I think he could pretty much win anything that he took part in at the moment, certainly with the shape that he's showing today. A little bit harder work for some of these runners, but still an impressive sight and some great encouragement from the crowds, as always, out there lining the routes today.
Just a quick hello to some who are out there, and Kev Ryan and Bex, Rebecca Wood, Robbie Best all running for Coco, and thanks to Bex for giving me a lift in, and will give me my lift home. We might have to wait a little while, we always do, with the operation of getting in and out of Tyneside, is one which many of these people are well versed in. They've all got their little cheats, they're all their little where they park their car, how they get here, how their friends and family get to watch them at different points on the route, and how they get home later. All works very, very smoothly. We'll keep talking about the charities. Don't forget, we'll be on the iPlayer afterwards as well if you want to keep looking out for any of these people who could be running and when they may well finish an hour or two after the elites.
You asked the question about who Big Pink Dress was raising funds for. He's raising funds for Kayaks today, which is an independent charity based in the Northeast for children and young adults with special needs and disabilities. So good luck to Colin, and I hope it's going well.
Great to see so many people, as ever, thousands and thousands, up to 50,000 people registered for this year's Great North Run. So as they make their way over the Tyne Bridge, just one or two others to mention. Charlotte Hughes and Leanne Garbett running for Alzheimer's Society. They've got so many people out there taking part for them today.
And a quick mention too to the Bodie Hodges Foundation, who help the families of bereaved of a child, and they are running today with the hashtag #BeMoreFreddie in memory of 7-year-old Freddie, who sadly recently passed away. His mum and dad Gemma and Dave run and raise funds for the charity, so thoughts with them today.
Well, the leader is a long, long way ahead. He's through 11 miles now, Jacob Kiplimo, and he has the chance to become the first Ugandan to win the Great North Run. Stephen Kiprotich finished third. Had so many different nationalities who've come to the event and indeed have won it as well. Didn't have a good start this season. You know, I remember he had to pull out of the Diamond League, which was held in Eugene before the World Championships. He wasn't going well there, and then his first big race, I think he was going to run in Paris, then he came to Stockholm, and he was beaten at the time by somebody we didn't know too much about, Dominic Lobalu, who's actually had gone on to have a very, very good season, and we were thinking, oh, is Kiplimo going to be any good this year? And then he turned up at the World Champs and ran brilliantly and has carried that on, and I think his season is just getting better and better, and we're seeing evidence of that here today.
As we look at Salomon Braga, who's also had an extremely long season and is sticking to the task and trying to, I guess, keep in sight somewhere in the distance, Jacob Kiplimo, and you just get the impression as he looks over his shoulder that there's no danger, really, I don't think, coming from back behind the road. Behind him, it's all happening ahead, and Jacob Kiplimo stepping out from that shadow of Cheptegei and kind of really establishing himself as somebody to be watched in his own right.
It's a big gap, and it's one which will just continue to grow, because I think Barega, you could tell just looking behind, and there's no danger either for him behind, because Kenan Bekele is going to be fortunate to hang on to third, I think, and I very much doubt he will, but the others are running quicker behind him. As Elvis. We used to have Jarrow Elvis, and just a word about Jarrow Jim as well, who was just one of those great local characters who took part in the Great North Run over so many years, sadly not with us anymore. Kiplimo, not sure he heard what Elvis was singing, but maybe it was some sort of inspiration for him. Anyway, away he goes, heads towards, he'll just get a whiff of the sea from where he is now, and then the sharp drop down at Marsden, and then that left turn.
Yeah, a look behind, but I don't think it was a worried look behind. I think it was probably more of a look behind, just see, although he's still continuing to do that, but just a look behind to see what is going on and what has been the effect of the upping of pace that he laid down. And he's still maintaining that. He has steadied back to around about 4:30 for that previous mile, but he has now only got 2 miles to go, and the only racing he's doing now is against the clock. I think this man in second is well beaten in second.
Yeah, seems to have got his head down a little bit more then, moving a bit better than he seemed to the last time we were looking at him. Maybe sensing, hey, there's not that far to go, I can push on now. When you're running your first half marathon, it's a little bit unusual in the sense that he's got these big gaps. Often, you know, when people keep moving away from you, it can be quite soul-destroying. But as we look at that beautiful view there, it's coming down to Marsden. But he's got he doesn't have those reference points, so maybe he's just getting reinvigorated again because he's running with himself and thinking, no, I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, and I think seeing those mile markers, and for a track runner always to see that you're approaching the final couple of miles is a very welcome sight. And this particular drop now onto the seafront is something that you kind of have to learn to master in road racing. I think we've talked about it lots of times here at the Great North Run. If you hammer too hard down the hill, and it is tempting because it's easy to kind of let yourself go and really hammer down, it is tough on those quads that have already absorbed a lot so far in this race. So there is a certain technique to just making sure that you kind of absorb the impact down. And I have to say the shoes probably do help. The improvements in shoe technology over the last couple of years means that it's less of a factor, but that drop hurts a little bit onto the seafront, and then it is a long run now down to that finish.
He's just passing the 12-mile point. Barrega, a good, what, 30 seconds, maybe more, 45 seconds or so behind. Mark Butler, a statistician, just pointing out that they're running 20 seconds a mile slow. They've slowed to around about the 4:50 pace. The athletes behind him in second, third, fourth. He's still knocking out miles around 4:30 there, thereabouts. And again, when you do drop down the finisher, the legs are tired, and you just have to be a little bit careful, as Paula was mentioning. But Kiplimo, I don't know what he's looking behind for. Nothing happening behind him. He can just concentrate on finishing strongly.
It's almost like he thinks he didn't see properly. There he checks his watch again as well. I don't think he can perhaps believe that he broke away as easily as he has done, and he's so far clear that he really has no need whatsoever to look behind. And it is true that the crowds along here are so great and so thick, so loud, that it is hard to hear the footfall of anybody should they be close to you, but there's nobody in sight. So when he's looking behind, he's not getting a view of anything at all. And I really think now he can afford just to focus on the road ahead of him and just to enjoy this victory here today. He still looks as though he's not even moved into his top gear, doesn't he? He still has another gear were he to be challenged in any way, and still very, very fluid and comfortable to look at.
Well, he's looking at his watch, and he's heading for just under the hour, perhaps, or around the hour mark. And I was just looking on the historical results. Paul Koskai was the first one to run under the hour 20 years ago. So it was exactly 20 years ago when Paul Turgat, Paul Koskai. Paul Turgat won the year before that. Paul Koskai in 2002 ran 59:58. That's the first time he broke the 1 hour mark in the Great North Run. Here's what he's doing, Paula. This is my theory. He's imagining someone is chasing him to make himself go a bit quicker, checking his watch, imagine as though it was happening, so that spurs him on to a hard last kilometre or so. But the truth of the matter is Barrega is way behind.
But if he's imagining, he doesn't need to look then, does he? Because it's all in his imagination.
No, he goes through, you know, oh, okay, go along with me, honey. But for whatever reason, he's trying to make himself. Yeah, I just love him running as well. You know, he's trying to make himself run hard, I was going to say, but he's got that lovely style. That's why he's good on the road. It's a different action, isn't it?
It is, and despite the fact that he is losing energy looking behind, even checking his watch when there isn't really a need to, if you cover his legs, his body is very, very steady, very stable. There's no excess energy being lost. And in contrast to that, to the very efficient and very effective style of Helen Obiri, but it's very different, and I think this one is very conducive to running extremely quickly on the roads and indeed on the cross country.
So Jacob Kiplimo went to the Olympic Games as the youngest ever competitor for Uganda in 2016 when he was just 15. He's a good kicker if he needs to be, but this year at the Great North Run he won't have to do that. He talks a lot about he lost his father himself when he was very young and had an upbringing which he said taught me about appreciating everything, and he says the running has given him an opportunity that many don't get, and he's decided he would grasp it with both hands, and he's done it incredibly well over the last few years and just continues to get better and improve. He's still a young athlete, he's still an improving athlete. When you think he's only 21, he'll be 22 in a couple of months' time. One more last look at the watch. There's such a great future ahead for him. He's already the world record holder at the half marathon distance. He's never won the Great North Run before, but he's heading towards that now, and he can enjoy these last few moments with the huge crowds that we'll have at the finish line. And indeed he's doing that, a wave to the crowd. That's good to see.
You know what I think he might be trying to do? He might be trying to time it exactly on the hour. So that's why he's looking behind and he's checking his watch so much, and maybe he'll just slow down now and make sure he crosses exactly on that hour.
I think he's just soaking in the moment. You can see he's looking round, huge smile on his face. He's a real engaging character, and he's certainly enjoyed his first ever Great North Run. It's ended up in victory for Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda. Just under the hour. Wonderful performance from him. He is the best in the world at this at the moment, and he's shown it here to great effect against some of the world's best behind him. But when he put his foot down, there was no question that he'd continue to go away. And he can enjoy the victory moments that go with his run now. He looks behind. Selman Barega is still not coming. Here he is, first ever half marathon. He'll run quicker than this, Paula. In his future years, he'll time it better in terms of his preparation, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I don't think really at the foremost of his mind would he have expected to be able to beat Jacob Kiplimo here today, as you said, the world record holder in the half marathon distance, and really taken so many strides forward this season. Barega maybe has that in the future, but not today, and it's been a great debut performance from him as well, and just a glance behind in that previous shot, and we could see Kenenisa Bikila in the background, but also Suguru Asako.
Barega takes second place in his first half marathon. He won't be too bothered about the time. He knows, as Paula said, that he's beaten by the greatest around at the moment, but perhaps one of the all-time greats. Kenenisa Bikila has rallied in the closing miles. The competitive spirit is still there in the 40-year-old champion. So he takes third place right on the 61-minute mark. Asako, who chased him hard, looked as though he was going to manage to get ahead of him, couldn't hang on to him, still got that bit of pace at the end.
And just looking at the stats that Mark Butler had provided us before the race, the fastest ever 40-plus half marathon was 60:41 by Haile Gebrselassie in the Great North Run in 2013. So Kenenisa Bikila has just missed out on being able to take that record from the great Haile Gebrselassie.
That looks like Brett Robinson coming in. We were hoping that Mark Scott might have hung on to fifth, but Mark certainly committed himself, didn't he? He really had to go early on. In fact, he led in the first couple of miles, and then has found that it's been a hard season for all. Robinson himself preparing for London in, what is it, 3 weeks today? And that's a solid run from him. It's going to be right on the 62-minute mark as he sees the three great champions just ahead of him. And can see Mark Scott just in the background.
Yeah, there is Mark, and I think, as he's talked about, it's been a difficult year for him. It started so well indoors, and then he just struggled to get it right. And listening to him talk in that clip that we saw, some of those days have been hard work, but he's come out today and he's tried to summon somewhere near the run that we saw from him last year, and he's stuck to the task. Well,
Mark Scott finishes, but there is the champion for 2022. Jacob Kiplimo wasn't one of the fastest Great North runs, and certainly not the fastest of his career. He will continue to get quicker and dominate this event, I'm sure, for a few years to come. But that's a real benchmark for him and for the Great North Run to have had him come and take part and to go away with the victory. Now back to Gabby.
Thank you very much, Steve. So fantastic elite races for both the men and the women, and the wheelchair as well. The rest of the afternoon, of course, as always, is about those masses out there. Many still just getting off the start line. Many of them will be experiencing those first moments of pain as well, but didn't look like it was pain at all for Jacob Kiplimo, did it? That was a very comfortable afternoon for him. But look at those scenes across the Tyne Bridge, and conditions just about perfect, especially if this was your first attempt at a half marathon. I can tell you this is the kind of day that you would want. And the 50,000 or so who started the day there in Newcastle will make their way down the 13.1-mile course. Here we've come to the finish in South Shields. They're raising money for a range of charities. £25 million today will benefit so many charities, 14 of which saw the Queen as a patron, and many of them actually had the Queen come and visit their charities. And her interest in those causes, as we heard earlier on today from Sue Gill from Cruise Bereavement, was genuine, was real. She wanted to know how those charities were helped by her being involved, and of course they were, because people wanted to be involved with them and to help them with their fundraising causes. And so to see those crowds out there today after they had that very reflective moment at the beginning of the day, the minute silence, and then the rousing version of something we're all going to get used to. It's going to take a while, isn't it? God save the King. Well, that was really a moment today, and the Great North Run back on its course. It's been a few years we've been away because of COVID, but today the crowds are gathering in South Shields as well, and all the way along the course you can see there people always come out, don't they, and offer sweets and snacks and drinks to people, and today that is no different. We wish them all well out there on the way as they make their way down here to South Shields. But let's now hand you back to Steve Cram, who's got all of the results from the elite races for us.
So let's begin with the wheelchair, the elite women. It was a very, very close race. Just 7/100ths of a second celebrated Eden Rainbow Cooper, the silver medalist from the Commonwealth Games, from Samantha Kinghorn. Shelley Woods came through a few minutes later in third. It was a close finish in the men's race as well, but not as close. But David Weir just had enough in the closing stages to win by 2 seconds over Dan Sidbury, who had a massive personal best, 43.01 his time in second place. And Nathan Maguire took third, just ahead of Simon Lawson. Well, we had 3 great champions in the women's race. The 2 Olympic gold medalists in second and third place couldn't hang on to the track specialist, the former world champion Helen Obiri of Kenya. The defending champion won again in 2022 by 2 seconds, 67.05 the winning time. Wasn't the fastest race this year, but it was an enthralling race from 3 great athletes. And Charlotte Purdue finished just ahead of Amy Eloise Markoffs to be the best of the British athletes. Jacob Kiplimo is the world record holder. He didn't need to run that fast today. 59.33 his winning time, ahead of the Olympic 10,000 meter champion Solomon Barega in his first ever half marathon. And Kenenisa Bekele showed us a little memory of times gone by with that sprint at the end to hold off Suguru Asako for third place. Brett Robinson was 5th. Mark Scott, last year's winner, in 6th place.